for that. Okay, this is, the committee of conference on the FY 2025 budget. I know a lot of people are here probably on housing, and, we're not gonna be taking that up at this point. I've read in the paper, that, obviously the Senate version is not, to everyone's satisfaction, and I just wanna go on record because when I presented the budget in the Senate, I made it very clear that what we had was parameters that had been negotiated and agreed to by the House. And so I just want to let people know that we are obviously know that you want to revisit what you had proposed and we had accepted and what got reflected in the Senate budget. But this was not done unilaterally in the Senate. And so I think that just to set the record straight, because obviously the press seems to think that somehow we had done this on our own, and I certainly don't want to have anyone have that confusion. And so what we're working on now is an alternative and what we can agree to. And so and we're very open to that discussion. But that's what is in the process, and that is why we are not taking up the housing at 9 o'clock this morning. So I've had House members email me regarding the language and the proposal in the budget, and so it's been a little disconcerting that we've ended up where we are, but that's where we are, and we'll somehow get ourselves out of it. But I just wanted to set the record straight because obviously if you've been reading the paper and so forth, and so as the chair of the committee, then I'm not only agreeing to something that is a topic of discussion, but then I obviously am the person who must be totally unilaterally responsible for what ended up in the Senate budget. And I just want you to know that.
Right now, we're going to speak to those voices out there, and I agree with you 100%. Every time people, when I see it too, whether it's in the paper or somewhere else, that somehow it seems to be the Senate did this, and I have tried very hard, Madam Chair. Sometimes my voice is maybe can be loud, but maybe not penetrating as yours can be. That this was something when the budget went over to the Senate, this piece that we're talking about, the GA, although I do have some concerns around the fact that we need to be building, and that's like in a whole nother bill. But because of the late hour that it was put in, it was not able to be costed out by our own joint fiscal or the administration. We sent over our best policy piece, but then as it was looked at in the couple of weeks afterwards, was showing that it did not come within the money box we sent. And we went to work with you from that moment and with the administration and our joint fiscal to see about getting in the box. And then things, it is right. This was a way for both of us to get the policy to fit the money, and it did. And then there's a couple of questions that the administration had since then around this that we are actually looking at. So there's no, I don't know, forced hand on that or some sort of tension. We know we need to fit the policy to the box, and we're working on that, and we've actually.
And that's why we're not prepared to do anything at 9 this morning. So I just wanted to let people know, because obviously we have probably many people in the room who are here who think we're gonna do something on it, but we're not prepared at this point. So it's a matter of just.
So I will hopefully come. We are waiting because when the BAA, when we were in community conference in BAA, that I think we had like 4 or 5 key people in the administration that were on vacation that week. And so Friday, we also did not have access to the full forces to be able to cost this out. It should be coming to us later this morning, ma'am.
Yeah.
And hopefully we'll be able to present you with that at our next meeting.
And,
Okay.
So I just wanted to let you know, because I know that people are here waiting, and so it's like waiting for Godot. You're gonna have to wait a little longer. or countdown to Nirvana. I don't know what. So let's see if we can start closing some out, because our goal is to get
Yes,
this wrapped up today.
today we're gonna goal to sign before it's dark.
Yes, because
Represent-
you have to go home and shop, and I have to go home and make maple cream.
We have a
salad.
committee dinner tomorrow that, although Representative Shai has gotten a big, people are working on it. But in, people, last Friday, or not last Friday, it feels like it was a long time ago, but it's. Representative Shai and Representative Wood sat for a bit and have taken a lead on some of the language pieces of it. And I was working on the GA and, as you might say, Representative Harrison and our committee was left in charge on trying to move all the bills off the wall. And he did a great job.
Seven.
Busy day. So this is where having a lot of members in the House helps.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
this is a number of different things. Grady put together a package for us, and I'm sure Jennifer will help me if I get anything wrong. The first one is, about out-of-state beds and pretrial supervision program. This was, Representative Squirrel, worked through this with Senator Sears, and Chair Emmons, so everybody's agreed on this particular language around, out-of-state beds and the pretrial supervision program, including the date. So it's just that first page is this.
So this is brand new. This is
Yeah,
it.
okay.
Okay. So you might want
Yeah, I
some
need
time.
to look at this.
Yes.
Um,
Let me just see what I can tell you more about that. No, I think there was a date change, which is hard to tell since the whole thing's underlined. That Senator Sears also wanted to have happen, so.
So we'll come
So
back to
that's,
this.
yeah, so that's the first piece.
Right, so basically, what they're doing, I just need to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
It's they're taking 24 carry forward and reallocating it to support the implementation of pre-trial.
Yes,
This is for out of beds
it's using the savings from the out-of-state beds,
in 24.
right? And to be able to carry forward, carry,
Because what we were
Before
doing
the
is
20%.
using, because aren't you then taking the savings that would go to justice reinvestment and using them in a different way?
I would think that
And because-
Representative Squirrel would be very.
Because what I was doing
Yes.
was the appropriation that we were able to add was to say, this will get you started. And as the number of detainees is reduced, then we will allocate those savings from out of state
Mhm.
beds. You're using 24 carry forward before you've done it. I think you're eroding your, I'm just concerned that justice reinvestment perhaps is being.
This is where justice reinvestment normally comes from.
Yes, that's my concern.
right,
And so, and by going to 24 and using carry forward, that's my concern that perhaps we are. And I don't know how you,
Creating a conflict with those two?
well, I never intended to, erode the justice reinvestment side. It was measuring the number of detainees, that reduction, in our facilities that allow people to come in. And since that hasn't started, you haven't got a baseline to measure it against. So that's my concern, that you perhaps are doing something that disadvantage justice reinvestment. So we need to be careful and make
Right.
sure that the dates are the right ones.
right. Well, Senator Sears had requested a date change. And everybody had agreed to it, and I can get more specifics. Unless anybody
Sure.
knows
We can-
more details
we can-
about that.
We can look at it again.
Okay.
I'm just very concerned about the 24 carry forward. Okay, and we can look at,
Okay,
I'm not necessarily. Actually, that was what I proposed to Senator Sears when I told him, you don't have as much money as you would like. And,
so maybe he's doing exactly what, yeah.
No,
He's not.
no, I came up with this construct that's, based on the number of detainees that we're reducing and bringing more Vermonters back, what that would need.
So this is doing what you were hoping it would do, it's not.
No, mine was, once you start free trial, and you're actually reducing your baseline of detainees.
Right.
Then you start,
And then that's when you start counting your savings.
I see.
So,
Okay,
right, so we need to double check on.
yeah,
Yes, you actually have, in your construct, you actually have to have those beds saved.
Yes, you had to actually measure the reduction in the detainees that were taking up beds in Vermont. And you can't do that until you start the free trial program.
Right. I remember when you were explaining it, me asking about whether or not this was gonna deter from the justice reinvestment. Specifically looking at the detainee
And
piece,
Right.
yeah.
my response was, no, I had no intentions of doing
I
it.
know, right, yeah.
well, we'll find out some more then.
And
Do we know whether there's gonna be carry forward for the unapproved bed program?
This is not my wheelhouse.
Okay.
I think we
Is that what they
do,
proposed it?
it's sort of like shifting the balance, kind of.
sorry to be looking at you, Emily,
That's okay.
if you have,
Well, we don't need to, let's not
Yeah,
take any more
okay.
time here.
Yeah.
your next, you've got.
So
something.
I'll just note that question, will there be other saves? I don't know if this next one was,
Well, no, we're on.
this was
page
about the,
two.
this was, I believe this is the one, that is, needs to update, reach up the, the living, ongoing basic needs right now.
That was it.
We actually have in statute a report, that we put in place on, our commitments that we're failing to fulfill. And there are a number of them, including the, notwithstanding of the HCD, but the other is, meeting the standard of need for our reach-up families.
Right.
And so, we had pulled out having a separate report. And it looks to me like what we're doing here is going back and rather than having two reports amending, that consolidated underfunding report to reflect
Right.
The most current year.
Yes,
So,
yes.
so that we don't
goes-
have two different figures. One is in,
Right,
okay.
so it's to align them both and and to update particularly in the
And-
shelter allowance, which is quite an old date they're using, so. To make that more realistic to what it is.
And it will all come down to money. It's only
Yes.
27 million.
Yeah.
And there seems to be very few voices for that group of needy Vermonters.
Right.
I feel like a voice in the wilderness.
So we're trying to address it with this.
No, it'll tell you how much more you need to put in.
Right,
Not that it's,
Our committee too, Madam Chair.
well,
I agree that sometimes, we hear from some of the louder voices, but I often ask myself in quiet, who are we not hearing from? Where is there? If we had not heard last year of some of the concern around 211 that did not have a loud voice in it and how strong they were, in what could have been left undone is, I agree with you. There are a lot of places that don't get the
loud
attention.
voice.
right,
Reach up most if we're paid lobbies.
This is
Right.
true.
exactly.
Um,
So is this acceptable?
Yes, I agree that we should just have one report. We should have one number, and it's better to just update the statute and have it as part of that consolidated. How poorly we're doing with our
Right.
current commitments, which people always want to add more new things, which means it puts those commitments at jeopardy.
Yeah,
And,
In that report, I remember too, from transportation has also been
yes,
carried hundreds of millions of dollars in the
Yeah.
not keeping up.
the pensions are in there as
Mhm.
well.
right.
So,
All right, so that one's okay? All right,
Okay,
I'm
so the
checking that
next,
one off.
page, 4, this is in the, section C. And, a couple things, I think this is where we added the 15,000 for Hardwick.
yeah,
But we also, changed at the bottom of page 4 in
Mhm.
section C. One of our members came to me and said, that he'd been talking to Doug Farnham, and because they're being audited, they haven't distributed any of the money in this section, the 6.25 million. And so they won't be able to get it out by June thirtieth, and our language had said if it isn't out distributed, it would revert to general fund, so they worked, with
So is
them, so
that's
September
fine.
30th.
Confident that that.
That's
date-
my understanding, somebody thought too, yes,
That's fine.
so, well,
We
we
certainly
thank,
don't want the money. to be
yeah,
reversed.
so that should be okay, good catch. Is this all the way over, is that all the same, it's just changing section?
Like,
Okay, non-emergency,
Grady might have another.
Part of what's happening here, just for the committee's awareness, is section C 101 and C 119 of the Senate version of the bill. Both were amending Act 78, section B 1100. So part of this proposal is just to consolidate section C 119 into section C 101.
okay.
okay, so nothing changes, it's just consolidated.
Right.
So that takes us to uh, page 7, E 312. But not sure that I have a lot to say about this one. Oh, I guess is that just section 4 on page 8, line 11, that's it's related to the opiate settlement fund, and Teresa, please jump in here if there's we have the.
So what you're doing here, and we're gonna have some conversation, is everybody wants to have a carve out and a designation of the opioid settlement money and a guarantee that once they got it, they continue to get it. I can understand why, but the question then ultimately, do we need an opioid advisory committee if in fact we're going to simply pre-allocate funds for the next 15 years? It's a policy question in terms of what we do with the recommendations. We don't have to follow them.
Right.
This is basically saying, I think, for the lifetime of those funding states, that we're guaranteeing that this is where this money will go.
Right, that would be line 17 through 20.
Yeah, that is what it's saying. And sort of the basis for this is because, we were preparing to accept the Senate's change in source of funding for that. Syringe service providers, as you know, it's been policy that we've established in the building for many years now, and yet we continue to fund it year by year, one time by one time. And so we had put it in the base, and there had been a change in the Senate, which we were prepared to accept if we could at least consider this. And I understand, Madam Chair, what you're saying in terms of looking forward, being able to continue with those funds in the opioid settlement fund. Does that really reduce what it is that, we have to allocate each year for something different or promising practice?
Senator Westwood.
I'm a little at a loss in some of this, in particular when I get down to 6, where it says we can't go below fiscal year 24 without talking to the joint fiscal. In 24, the year we're in, there was only 800,000 that we put into this. So this puts 1.1 million into with general fund and opioid fund into 25. And so I'm wondering, because a piece of this was $200,000 in grant money. And I don't know if you're including the grant money in what you wanna look at as your base, or where you wanna go for base.
That's
So-
the AIDS thing, it's related to the.
To the syringe.
To the syringe, it's not about line 14.
Yeah,
Oh, you're,
get on page 9, and you talked about all of the syringe programs,
and then you go back to the AIDS.
and then you by reducing the aid services and peer support organizations or syringe service programs.
That's the change.
And you talk about going back to fiscal year 24. 24 in line 6, that in 24, if you remember, we had 400 in base. We have we in budget adjustment put another 400. And then there was a 2-year grant program, 200 of which went into that to get them to 1 million to keep the 4 organizations going. If we go back to what is state dollars in 24, that's 800,000. That's not a million, and we're putting 1.1 in.
Right,
So
right.
what's your intention? Is it to go back 800,000? I'm just unclear.
Right, well, I think that what the concept was, right, and the only new language is the one from line 21, 22, and then 1 and 2 on the next page. But I understand your point, I mean, you know, should we
Six is already in there.
I believe 6 is
Yes.
current language, isn't that's the only new
Yes.
language is the language about the intent to continue funding. So that's language that you actually already.
I think we need to,
I'm okay with putting FY 25 there if you want to, Senator.
well,
Now we're relooking at the language as it exists,
That
it's
we've
raising
already
some
read.
questions.
yes,
Well, if we've got some questions, now's the time to get some clarity.
Well, I mean, I feel like we have agreed on a dollar amount
but
between
I think we have for the 4 existing programs. I also would question if,
Did the Senate break out the money and include money for new programs as well, 350,000?
yeah, the 350 for new programs, I'm fine with that because we put it in and.
Yeah,
But as I read this now and I look at that, and a second time, I'd say to you, I'm not really clear if what we're, yeah, because the 24 would go back to, with state dollars 800,000.
so part of really what we're trying to address here is that the, you know, frankly, the health department was very, very slow in getting out resources this year, that we're in right now.
They had that $200,000 left in that grant. They let the program close down
Yeah.
in the Northeast Kingdom before they let that 200 out, and then our budget adjustment.
So we got 2 different things, one of which is the glacial pace of getting the money out, which is a different issue than the amount. It's just
Right.
whatever it was, they didn't get it out. So the question, what do you want to do? I think the main thing here was to basically say, well, once we've made this commitment,
We want to get them to a stable level, is what I think you
Yes.
want.
Yeah,
And
yes.
Yeah,
well,
I think
that's what you're trying to do here with the opioid settlement money is
right, to assure that it stays at a
at a
predictable level, at least for some period of time.
Especially the year to year, because otherwise it would have been in base at some level, although we all know that we can change the base, but there's some level of being able to lean on it going forward when you're working in communities, that there's some stability out there.
So 6 is not a topic. It's not a subject of disagreement here between the 2 versions. The question is, does it need to be modified now that we're looking at it? I don't know. What would you recommend for a change? Or maybe take a look at it, we'll come back.
Okay.
All right.
I think that we have a agreement with you that we want to
I think
make
you
sure that
can
we're
work it
stable,
out.
yeah.
Yeah, I'll come back.
Okay,
Okay,
sounds
so
So
I'm gonna put Teresa. And
on number 6, I guess
Just
number
go down.
4, the question becomes one. Do we want to make any recognition of the, do we have the advisory committee and statute?
yes. The opioid settlement advisory committee is in statute, yes.
So should we reference unless there are insufficient funds or, I don't know, we're preempting,
For the advisory committee,
Advisory
it makes a different recommendation or something,
I don't know,
or in consultation with it.
I don't know, I'm just raising it.
Yeah.
And we created something and now we're ignoring it at our pleasure.
Well, and I think it sort of begs the policy issue about funding ongoing services, which syringe services have been for many years now, with special funds. And which is, again, why we had put it in state funds. So, and absent having it in state funds, we feel a need to be able to have some stability for syringe service providers, to be able to understand and not deal with what we dealt with this year, frankly, where we ended up, they ended up having to close the program
Um. And then restart.
and then restart.
Because,
Yes,
but that
right.
was because, my question is, we're putting in 700,000 for the next 15 years. What if we're successful and we don't need 700, I mean,
Right.
you're actually setting forth, a specific amount, so.
Well, I feel like we said intent. I mean, we felt like this was intent language, not necessarily, it's not appropriating it. Obviously, you
No.
can't do that, but.
Right.
I think it's just trying to signal an intent to these providers that we understand what they are doing and we support what they're doing. And since we were not able to do that in general fund and base, that,
Well, this is certainly, can't think of a better use for.
Yeah, no, it's more stable base.
Right.
yeah,
I don't have a
I
quarrel
think-
with that.
I think the question in six and all through this is, how do we give them a comfort level that there's going to be stable money, and maybe what we should
Right.
direct the opioid settlement committee to recommend a stable base that would keep this level.
that's another way of
service.
looking at it.
Yeah.
too. Yeah,
Because we dealt with that, a variation on that with the, OPC. And which was using the settlement levy. And we did say, look, it's a pilot and you can't just do a one-off. You really have to commit to funding it for, multi-year. So we had a variation on that theme in terms of commitment of multi-year. So my only, what I'm just trying to be sensitive to is if we've created, like, now we know we created a statute, is, obviously giving some recognition to the role but the reality is, once you start making these allocations out of that settlement, they get interpreted as entitlements, and there are certain areas where you say that is going to be ongoing, and this might be one, but when they make recommendations, I think they've got to be very careful, are they in fact making a longer term commitment than just that 1 year of grants?
I agree. And I think between Senator Westman and I, we can come up with some language that maybe references their decision-making process.
I'd like to respect that, I think is really what.
I just like one last thing, in the 350 that went in this.
Yeah.
I think what we wanted them to investigate is expanding services. It can either be open a new site, or they presently have a mobile unit.
Mhm.
If
But
they
to
decided,
increase the geographic distribution.
right, I'm just saying to be clear for them that if they decided they were gonna have a second mobile unit, that would work too, however they wanna do that. Because the problem is, as we've learned, to cite anything physically here becomes problematic.
Well, take a look and see if that language doesn't say it, to increase geographic distribution.
I think that does, but I was
covers
just
it.
trying to.
But if it needs to be modified, then.
Yeah, I mean, it could be mobile, it could be a secondary site to one of the existing programs.
Yeah,
It
like
could be
It could be anything.
satellite, yeah.
That
that's-
seems like it's the most flexible. This
All right,
is
so-
pretty flexible.
But I said that just to be clear.
So we want to make sure that we're not eroding justice reimbursement.
Right. I'll check on that.
We want to make sure that we recognizing that we created an advisory committee and we'll come up with some
Okay.
new language that reflects those.
Right.
Our discussions.
Right, and we accepted E323.
And can I just ask a question on the advisory committee?
I've been just thinking, Grady, why don't you sit down, because you're having to track everything.
Yeah.
And if anyone should have a seat in this environment, I think it would be you and Emily. And Emily's already at her post.
Emily doesn't want to take that seat.
Hannah's trying to do that, and we have joint fiscal occupying the bench, so. We all set with this then?
That's
For now, and we'll come back.
Right, yeah,
to
two
this.
spots to revisit one pass. Right,
All right,
and we have, and two pass. Two.
To
to
the
reach out
update
and
and
the date
the
and
extended
change the
date
date,
and
yeah.
those two, yeah.
So we do have some things, I think, on the, layout sheet.
Oh, yeah.
Some of that, we've had some, questions. The first one at the top on V 201, line 4. Court diversion adds 296,700 GF to address the high caseload. And there was a question as to whether part of that 296 included, a position. Otherwise, what are we spending the money on? That was a little unclear on what the, that was.
Well,
V 201.
Need to note that.
this goes back, and Amy, maybe you can help us, because this would have been on Senator Sears.
Mhm.
It did not include a position.
Okay,
Maybe that I can find out more.
okay. If we don't, I don't know how else we'd use the money.
If we were
To address the high caseload if we weren't having people do the work.
That's what I know from each.
You might wanna move on.
Okay, we'll come back to that. The D 203, the Defender General assigned counsel, somehow the court IT funds got confused in there, and that's on the contingent list, so that is irrelevant to the Defender General, and we agreed with the Defender General, that's fine.
I'm sorry, what number is that?
It's a lot,
Line
10.
Yeah, we'll take that core IT fund. note.
Take that out and it's fine.
Yes, that goes on.
Right.
That's
Oh,
something
okay.
else, right,
Yeah.
right. And then, the next one, line 14, B 205, the state's attorneys. We just had to move the victim's advocate to be 206.1, I think that's been
You've done
done.
that already, great.
Yeah.
Okay, that's.
Yeah.
So that's fine.
Mhm.
Um.
225, I don't have marked
I
up.
don't have that marked up
But-
either. And that and NOFA are the two that we're looking at
No,
together.
we have two different things. This is the base, that
Right.
gets impacted 625. The other was how you split the 450.
So that was where the question
Which is the
was
one-
on the NOFA.
It's on the
Okay.
one time,
All
that
right.
one time.
Okay.
This is just.
Restore it.
Okay, so that's fine.
That, yeah.
So it's confusing because we're talking about two different places.
Right,
Yes.
we were holding it open because we just
We wanted-
understand the relationship and wanted to make sure we had a conversation
Yeah.
around NOFA.
So that's okay, and then next line, row 19, ban $1 million signatures.
We
that's
just filled
fine.
it into the base.
Yeah, and that's fine.
And that's good, they'll be happy. I have nothing, I think line 23, the second B 301, that was the urgent care, and I think we need to strike that, because you took that out.
Yeah, we found out that the grants went through another year.
Right.
And we're recommending that
Right.
what we will do is
So-
the 3%.
Right, so line 23 can go. And then, not doing anything with, so we just added in line 29, the 350 for the new syringe programs.
Yeah, the.
Yeah, so-
350.
Right, so that goes to
Yeah.
the language, so that's okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then I think line
We just
30,
hold on just a second, because I'm moving both. It was, 312.
just
Yeah.
B 312.
Yeah.
And then line 30, B 313 restores the 1.59, because that's a 2-year contract, the community coalitions.
It's more than that. What, that is, the governor's budget had a 3 million, to support the coalitions. And, the funding stream for that is the excise tax on cannabis.
right.
And, that came with it was 30% of the, excise tax revenues for a maximum of 10 million. This year, don't get, the gross was about 10 million, so a
Right.
third of it was the 3 million
Right,
excise tax. It is dedicated under the bill that we passed
right,
to prevention. So we put the 3 million back because that was, you
Part of
can
the
hold it.
construct, that is part of the
Yeah,
exercise.
it was
Right,
part of the,
right.
but that money had a fence around it. It wasn't fungible.
Right.
So one of the things, and I think this was language that you struck, is that we're not seeing outcome information with regard to community coalitions. Wanting to see how this investment is resulting in change. And you know, we do get reports about, we did so many things of this and
A
so
lot
many
of
things of
input.
that, yes.
Right,
We're not
What we
seeing,
did, but not,
we're
how
not
better
seeing
off.
how people are better off, and these have been in existence for quite some time now, and so, I mean, that was the language that y'all struck, and is one of the reasons why we had borrowed from that 3% and put it only half of that, but you know, I guess I'm wondering if you would be interested in reconsidering some outcome language.
Sure. I mean, I asked the commissioner that myself, and he maintains that they are measuring and that they are effective. Now, maybe the metrics that we want them to use might not be the ones that they are using, but they are supposedly, so much of what we have is evidence-based. So
Right.
we can add some language about it, because.
Can we have it in there?
Yeah, we'll tear it down, but
Because
So-
it does tie into, that whole construct that we did when we passed cannabis.
yes,
Right,
So,
I mean, he
we're
can
o-
say,
we're
like,
okay with
how
the
do we
dollar
know
amount.
what
Right.
else anything that is.
But we'd really like to make sure that
I
there's
could
some
say
form of
just
request for
Yes.
desire for outcome data.
Right,
so.
Well,
Exactly.
you know, I'm gonna take this moment to express, a frustration, and that has to do with the progress report on smoking cessation.
Mhm.
There's not a shred of data that would show us if we're making progress or not. We have a lot of rhetoric, a lot of words, and in fact, Vermont, for the last couple decades, is one of the highest, rates of smoking of pregnant women in the country. We are behind Mississippi, I think, Georgia, Texas. I mean, it is an embarrassment, and it's like everybody is focusing on smoking cessation, and they've got their ideas. It's sort of like, why, out of the most vulnerable, if you were to target a high risk, wouldn't you think it would be pregnant women who are gonna bring newborns into probably secondhand smoke? And we are doing dismal. And so, I think we need to be very careful in how we write it, that we have specific metrics that, that will help us measure the effectiveness, because we do get a lot of input and we get a lot of narrative and very little about what difference did it make.
Exactly.
And
We've been writing that for,
I feel like a one-trick
Years.
pony on that, but you would think that all the health organizations who are coming in and with their agenda, that is not something that, would be of top concern. But it hasn't been.
right.
So I'm just
Right.
using this as an opportunity. Most people say, I had no idea that we're behind Texas in terms of, where we are, and, we're higher educated, higher income, and so many of these other states. I think we're even behind Mississippi.
Yeah, it's not good, the
No.
data on
You know,
tobacco use by
And other,
pregnant women.
yeah, and other information on other topics that I find out from the New York Times, like, oh, Vermont's, really? Is that?
we've had language in the budget trying to push this issue for,
Yeah, for years.
So I
Yeah,
will bring it
people
up,
running around
is
doing
we're gonna
activities
add some
themselves.
language that we try to figure out the best we can, how to get, some,
Outcomes, data.
some outcome data
Right.
and metrics and what the collection is, and that it's not just, inputs, and then activity report, which is generally what we're getting.
right, and isn't that the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results? Maybe it's time for a different activity.
Collecting data that will give you the, confidence that in fact, it's more than the same group of people who frequently are in a variety of meetings.
In any event, that was exactly, all of the things you're saying, Madam Chair, was why we did not fund it at that low level, because.
But you can't use it for treatment. Well,
Yeah.
Nice try.
So are we okay with restoring the money and you'll add some language?
We need to add
That would
some
be my,
language.
that's what I wrote in our.
We add something about smoking cessation too.
We are agreeing with the money and,
And
we'll
we're
come
gonna
back
work
with
on,
language.
that's why I'm pointing to, you got it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir.
All right.
All right, the next one, I don't have, I've got opiate language, the 313. The 1.4, do you?
We're working on some
We will have
language,
something
something
for you
on
That
that.
at our next
that was
meeting.
your funding source,
Mm.
will be just restored was your funding source for the recovery. I don't have
And
any,
actually, you struck our
Yeah.
recovery business.
yes,
Yeah.
but,
But we're working on it.
yeah. The question becomes if we have a little bit of general fund.
Right.
And how much.
Yeah.
If we just gave it as an increase to the current base, it's a huge increase. So the question is, are we expanding the number, is the plan to expand the number of recovery houses and therefore more beds? And what does that look like, which would be a good one-time use,
Right.
and.
Yeah. Yeah, and we will have that information for you at that.
It's my understanding there's some.
There is expansion as well as, we haven't, part of what this is we haven't reached the point where, we are able to fund them, if we were just looking at, cost of living like we did for sort of established providers. We have not reached that level of support for recovery housing yet in our budget, so that's why we were increasing the amount of support to existing recovery housing as well as establishing, this would establish two new recovery
So-
houses. With
Well,
some,
even with what we put in, it was like a 17% increase, which was quite a bit more than everybody else.
Is that the 141,000?
Yeah, but.
that's because they've been very woefully underfunded. It's not something frankly that we have as a system spent sufficient resource.
Where it's the level at which where people fall back in.
It,
And the rate of people that going back in addiction is the greatest.
it's right there, right? And we
So,
spent a lot on treatment. We spent a lot on the hub and spoke system. We spent a lot on,
no, I'm a big
Resident-
supporter of recovery residents. I mean, that's not the issue. The issue was not, trying to, understand how much we were adding,
Expanding.
expanding capacity and how much and when you expand it, obviously you've got to adjust the base because you've got operating costs. So we've got a combination of upfront acquisition probably
Yeah.
of property, and then the second part would be, the
Some
ongoing
additional
operational. Yeah.
right,
And you have data on that.
I do have some data on that we'll present at our next meeting.
Because we have received nothing. We have nothing in terms of,
Info.
no, in terms of the, just, the explanation of what what would be the plan and how many more beds we're talking about.
And we do understand that there's about $1.2 million left on the bottom line in the opioid settlement.
Well, that would be good for, acquisition, the one time, because you've got startup costs, I would imagine, and, imagine even basic things like furniture maybe,
So.
like a bed.
We will,
Like a bed.
like a bed for recovery housing,
Yeah.
so
Um,
we'll be presenting some language in the
Okay.
proposal.
Okay,
So I'm jumping down
The next
to
two?
line 45,
okay, 45.
no, wait, 47.
I think, yeah, can I do
ID
that?
501, did you want to do something before that?
I just wanted to, I guess, make a statement about line 32B 313 about the House, the grants administrator position. So at the health department, they have taken on a huge additional responsibility for a lot of extra funding and grants going out, particularly around the opioid and substance use services. And part of what we have heard over the last year is that it is getting more and more difficult for them to do this within the existing staffing. And it's part of the reason why we see delays in the money getting out the door.
Well, maybe we should be funding the opioid settlement money, grants administration.
Well, that's what this was sort of intended to add a position for that.
That's what you were using opioid money for.
I
No,
don't think we
no,
use
no,
this,
I don't
we
think
use,
so.
we didn't use
General fund.
opioid, we use general fund for that, yeah.
Cause
So-
Well-
This is broader than opioid settlement?
Well, it's all
It's
substance,
grants.
it's all
All
substance
grants.
Well,
use,
you
yeah.
We don't have it, you'd have to add it as a general fund from here, because it's not,
Right, it has to be stable.
yeah,
Yeah, I was just
explaining why.
explaining why we had done it.
I had,
That's why I didn't close it.
Well, we'll
Just
keep it-
close it, keep that open.
well, it's just gonna be on the general fund, how much.
How much?
Should
we
be
have.
a contingency.
So
Thought.
put a little maybe.
question. I already did. Oh, Teresa.
So now I'm jumping down to line 47, education services, the literacy position that's passed.
Oh, yeah.
So we
Oh,
can
two
add that
done.
literacy position. And then the adjusted ed payment is gonna be whatever we get at the end.
Uh-huh.
Well, I did it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
So
But that's
we'll get that number, if it's not us to decide, I guess, so, and then B 53, B6, the state colleges, that's fine.
Yep.
And so is whatever the language is that's associated with that. Don't have anything about transportation at this point, I think that I'm looking to the Senate on all those things.
We have the numbers.
Okay, so
Good update.
703.
that was the serve, learn and earn in the base.
I think we're coming to terms with that as we look at the base. When we look at the
That was
base.
a program that didn't exist before COVID. And now we're
Actually,
adding in
it's-
general
no,
funds.
it,
That's what I was told.
So we,
no, actually, it's building on the Youth Conservation Corps.
Uh-huh.
And it's a coalition now of Vermont Works for Women and Audubon. So two of those programs existed prior to COVID. And now they're coming in with in a collaborative, which we like workforce.
Right.
But I view it as sort of economic justice. We're putting money into CCV, we're putting money into higher ed, we're putting money into career and technical education. And I don't know if you've ever been to any of their programs, but they're serving people with actually intellectual disabilities. They're people who have been sort of on the margins of our workforce. And it seems like the focus is all on upper level, and this is taking people who really need basic
Yeah.
skills and supervision. And so it's a building on those
Yeah.
two pre-existing, because Vermont Works, Tip Fluently is,
Yes,
yes.
she did
she
work
was
there.
involved years
Yes.
ago.
With this, just for, I should never ask questions sometimes if I don't know the answer.
Well, that's what they tell you in the core program.
I never. But anyway, in Richmond, I'm envisioning where I drive by, that I visited there, I'm assuming, and which is never a good idea.
That's the youth conservation.
That's youth
Board.
conservation corps.
This would fit in that same category. Okay, all right.
They do a lot of work in the farms.
I'm okay, I know that we haven't, like, we have to start to make some decisions on, we'll see this on our base.
All right, now, transportation, we do have,
Yeah.
some agreed upon numbers
Yep.
at this point.
Yep.
Wanna take it from here, Andy, in terms of,
Well, it's not
Pretty
1.7, it's 1.1, but JFO was.
all right, so,
I'd suggest to do this as a package this
Yeah.
afternoon, because we don't
Okay.
have it all compiled.
you don't have it already?
Right,
Okay.
and the analyst rather just present.
Okay, well, at least they have agreed upon the numbers, so
That's
within
good.
this post.
Right.
G3.
So then,
63.
yeah, 63, that was when we were using the vacancy savings to at least make a point that there's a lot of that, and there probably more, it's how the administration balances the budget.
It was not only.
So we'll agree to your.
It's a classic plug.
It is, it is.
There, like, if we're
Thought
gonna
that it
use
was
it, then
fun
let's
to-
go for it, let's lean totally right into it.
Right,
Mm-hmm,
64 will
That
hold off.
gets us in trouble.
well, this is true,
Well,
I have been in trouble
sometimes-
before.
And then line 65, I believe that's the,
64, okay?
64 is all about contingent, we aren't done with that yet. That's
That's the, it's a long list,
It
but
just adds more. All we're doing is,
we'll have to go.
We have to
through
go
it.
through that, we have not gone through that, so I'm not ready.
all right, cash.
Cash
Cash
fund,
fund's
that's
on
the
the line.
reduce, that's the 30,000 for the fishing derby.
Yeah.
That's
What
capital
is
money, I
that?
don't understand why it's coming out of the capital. It's a one-time event, and I know we're giving back BGS their planning money, so, but this seems like not the right place for it.
It came out because it came out of the general fund catch fund
Right,
piece, and that's why it's reflected in the budget.
I
the
know.
same as the other.
as opposed to one-time general fund.
This is the 30,000 for the fishing.
Fishing derby.
We've given you past
Father
years,
Trees.
and every year.
Look, we have the walleyes,
usually from
let
the
me
catch.
tell you, the walleyes.
I know.
too.
These
So,
walleyes taste good. All right, so that's fine, it's 30,000, but something needs to be done.
I don't need Father's Day to be.
well,
be than
actually,
Mother's Day.
we did. Remember, we reduced the cash fund and moved 4 million over into the
Yes,
budget,
yeah.
so,
Right, so that's okay.
so.
And then line 68, that incorporated, I think Grady, you just
That's
told
the
us
big
about
one.
that, was the 111 and 101, we just put those together. And that's all I have for that section.
So
now.
68, okay.
And then C-120, we need to have more discussion
Yes.
on it.
Right, and we'll have more information on PCBs at the next time.
Then I've got two down here, that's
Then we have
the garage,
Yeah,
83, I've got just the word what. But.
Oh,
And then we
oh,
have
yeah.
PFR.
We got it closed out.
83, the contingent?
Yeah.
the human caseload
On
reserve.
here, it's closed out.
And then, but back to 81, the DFR, I mean, that's, we're still working on
Is
it.
it closed out or just?
The lime and blue hasn't been closed out.
Oh, it hasn't?
I don't know why, I can't remember why we highlighted it.
So it's a
It
different
was a
section.
heading,
Oh,
and then other parts of it got closed out, and so just.
Right, so,
Blue.
so the
Yeah.
caseload reserve, I think we already agreed to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too, line 86.
Yep.
Do you want a quick explanation on D-101, part A? I don't know that you closed it out or not, it's just funny.
Yeah, go ahead.
So that was in the house construct, there was a reversion from a one-time appropriation in AHS, that's $10 million that was set aside for COVID contingency. There was this additional reversion that helped pay for some of the investments that the House had in the Agency of Human Services. The Senate removed that reversion after further conversation with the Agency of Human Services about a desire to maintain that appropriation to make it available
Right.
to close out.
Right.
So that is,
I thought there was a good reason, but I couldn't remember it.
So we can close that out even though it's in
Right.
blue?
yes.
So that is a line
83.
83, yep.
And then 86, I thought we already did.
Yeah, that's not gonna that's just to allow the 5 pilot project.
Right.
Right,
I think
it had a couple of components to it that
Yes,
Yeah,
interact.
so that should be okay. The next is the pay act, and that's come.
That's,
We've got this.
it's, yeah. I know, but I've just, so Madam Chair, we notified and I said,
It's over
it's,
here.
we're going to be closing this
So that's-
today. And then if there was any thinking in that direction, that's.
We'll have to know by the end of the
We'll have to,
day.
yeah,
Right.
exactly.
So,
Heading on.
okay, so going to line 92, that's okay. We're
Okay.
holding off on that,
That was
that's
the
gonna be
date.
fine, the reversion and
Yeah.
writing that language. And I think the rest of this, we're still. Just checking my list. It show. You show, we're gonna,
I have, 142, or E-142, which is line 106, the pilot. That you agreed, I know, Representative Shaw,
Oh,
that was
yes.
something that you were,
yes, that's gonna be fine, we did some work on that,
Mhm.
so.
What number is that?
Line 106.
Okay.
And 108 is okay.
Yeah.
And then 110, that was. That was already closed, according to the previous
Yeah,
one.
I have 110 is closed as well.
Yeah,
And 111.
right, that should be closed.
I wrote there, Carrie, okay, Bill S-305, and depending on where that bill was going, it either needed or didn't. I'm not.
Oh. Wasn't that in the end, didn't need to have,
Mhm.
I think the fees they didn't have to have it because the way the bill got balanced out, right, in the House and the Senate.
Right.
So,
Into 305.
so,
Right, so 110 can close.
Yeah. because the bill did set the fees.
Mhm.
Right. And then
I have
112, I have
is open,
Teresa language.
That's what I've
yes.
got, Teresa.
I,
Teresa's on this.
Katie is drafting language.
Okay,
Okay,
and then I think that
then
maybe,
highlighted all the way down to,
no, 114, did we already close that?
I have.
114 and, the one we just said, 112 are
Mhm.
related, so.
Mhm. So those are,
Um,
Okay,
you can strike 114,
Mhm.
just keep 112 open.
okay,
That's the,
okay.
and then I've got the next one that I have open, which is 124,
Yeah, because I think we closed, according to this other thing, we closed 119,
120.
120,
122,
123. 120.
124, isn't that the language we were
That's
just talking
open,
about?
yes.
Oh, yeah,
That's
that's
open.
open, never mind, 'cause it's on a different one. It's
So
on the closed
19,
section.
What,
and then
Well,
20.
119, I don't think the priority list for
Oh, we
the,
need the priority list.
Yep.
yeah.
That's
I
why,
believe
okay.
that's still open.
Yeah, and that's where we wanted to make sure that we were, not overloading Viva. And so we wanted to make sure that they did the upfront
It's
work
study
for
one,
MSP and, the, rates. And then, as they had time to move down through the list.
All
So,
right, so that still has a little
yeah, we
thing that we.
Okay, and we're still getting some language on 120 about the residential. Is that the one?
No,
we
that was
got the
just
word
the
therapeutic?
Yeah, that's all.
So that's really close.
Yeah.
That was okay, that's close.
Yeah,
Okay,
that was,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, 121 I have closed, 122 I have closed, and
Yeah.
123 I have closed.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
those
ours
were-
showed, now we're down to
So the
1.
next three,
126.
124, 125, and 126 I have open.
124 is still open, because that.
125 is closed.
Yeah, that's right, it's not on our list.
Right, and what's 126, E313?
That strikes language
For
on.
substance misuse prevention appropriations.
So the committee was just discussing, incorporating some of the House E313 language for relating to, the substance misuse.
Yeah, so we'll leave that open.
Okay, so we'll leave that open, all right.
Right,
And
and
then I think,
you have 127 closed, 128 closed, 129. I have put in wrong section. Hold. Foster care subsidized adoption expenditure.
Can you help us with that?
oh, no,
That's the only notes I have on that, but.
129.
Oh,
So, that was just an omission on my part that I didn't include the actual language that was being repealed in Act 87. So it's just adding
Okay.
a strikeout to Act 87.
okay, so it's technical
Putting it in
change.
the wrong direction.
So we
That
can,
was-
we
yeah,
can close that
we
out.
can-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, did we decide on eligibility yet?
No,
No,
not yet. GA housing.
but I think we're moving in that direction. GA housing is another, we'll be back soon. 10 o'clock was
And then
data coming.
133 and 134, that was the language we just talked, is that the language we talked about?
Oh,
Variable reduction
134
134.
was, but I don't know what 133 is.
I know what it is, and we did not agree with it, and I will tell you why.
Okay.
It is a new proposal to add a new program, and it's a state funded supplement to the food stamp program. And it was targeting the households that get a smaller benefit and, thinking that discourages, participation. But this gets back to, if we were to do anything, to add a new program, where would we put the money? And this gets back to my conversation, about reach out.
Right.
So the people that get, the minimum benefit of $23 would have a household income of $4,330 per month. A reach up household would have a maximum with the food stamps and the maximum reach up benefit of $1,622. So would you want to, if you had general fund, would you want to do more to help your reach up mother,
Right.
and with a couple of children, or getting $622 of combined benefit, or a household with $4,352? And I'm basically saying I would put my money where our rhetoric has been relative to children in poverty. And if you were to have a few $1 million, I would not want to, this is an example of a study. And, as my colleague across the hall said, a study sometimes is a booby prize. But I don't think that, start a new program, when we are doing such a dismal
We're
job
knee deep in the
Right.
and poverty, that I don't think that we should be asking PCF, that should be focusing on emergency housing and a few other things, including, children in foster care and a residential secure facility, to put that on their plate, because I do not see that it's going to have, at least as I'm concerned, would be top of the list for where we would put our first dollar of general fund.
I think my colleague is fine.
yeah,
I
I'm
would
okay with that.
I would
agree.
just say as a supplement to that, part of the reason in, on the one-time list, we put money for local food shelves, so
Right.
that gets directly back with very little
Right.
administrative costs.
Right.
That was 34.
That was 130.
133 and
We already
134.
crossed it 130, so 135, 136, Teresa, you were gonna confirm that that was okay. Did you get confirmation from DCF that the?
Are you talking about fuel assistance? Yeah,
Yeah.
that is okay.
Okay, so we can close those
Well, I'm
out.
glad they told you the same thing they told us. Because that's their general.
Well, they had to check, I have to say.
They had to check?
They had to check, yes.
Oh,
Which was a non-issue.
Well, we
So-
were
so did we
concerned about
Close
that.
133.
We closed
Yes.
33, 34, 35, 36.
Yes,
And then we're holding on 38, 138, 139.
Yeah.
And then the VC 602 line 146 is fine, the Vermont State College's transformation language that matches with the money. I think the VHIP, was that all right to
Yes.
the statute, I think, well, I know
Here-
you did it.
Because we don't have the bill that sets the 5 and 10 years,
Right.
so we went back to the original statute, and that's what we amended here to add this group of household
Right.
for those units.
yes, we're fine with that.
Yeah,
We'll
I think
deal with
that's fine.
anything in 687 that we have, yeah.
right. And I think that's
It's also in that bill.
it.
Yes,
It is, but we have other things we wanna
I don't think we just.
address in 687.
We have to hold the education.
What's 687? Did we just?
Act
Act
50
of
bill.
50
Big
bill.
housing.
It's the one you
Housing.
compared to Sominex.
It's-
I got it now.
The floor can be blah, 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 but if they say the word budget or money,
Yeah.
Are you
it's
waking
like, I'm waking up.
Oh,
Okay,
all right.
So-
did we, 138, I don't have closed.
No,
I
no,
do have a
38,
question.
39, we aren't closed yet.
Okay, cause that's this out of state, I just had.
Right, we're gonna. I'll
The one
put
says
that-
house provide language and the out of
That's the
state,
out of state, that's what,
that's what we just
Did-
did.
did-
but
Right,
now
so
we
that's
can-
what we're gonna
okay.
just confirm the information. The securities regulation fees, I think that's coming later.
Mhm.
And then the
effective date.
the finance analyst at 152
Yes.
is in the yield bill, so I think we have to wait for that.
Which we're taking up at 1.
Okay, great,
Okay.
and obviously that, we need it.
Yeah.
So we're,
We're down to a few,
Yeah.
just so that covered a few
Oh,
more.
wow, look at all
Good
that.
work.
Green.
Oh, look at all this green.
It's gonna get bigger.
I pretty
It
much
is.
destroyed a highlighter to just highlight the whole thing, just to, so that I could identify the gaps quicker,
Okay. So
but that's just the
um,
way I am.
so what we have here is, later we will do the transportation figures. And then, we're still, holding out, on the
Like
3%. And,
Right.
Alright, so then at 11,
We'll come
so
back.
transportation,
if we have it available, probably would by 11, but
so I'm gonna cross out more language
It's,
coming,
it's ready, it's just a matter of making sure both of the chairs have seen it all.
okay.
We think we agree, always have seen the language.
11, Sarah,
Again,
you-
making this-
Sarah, you-
Research.
Okay.
We might not,
Yes.
Okay, and I'll check with Trevor on the judiciary and industry adjustment, and these two will be working on the opioid settlement language.
On the then I took that.
Alright, so I have that we're meeting again at 11, and my colleagues are saying they're gonna need a little more time to react, you need to work on the,
Yeah.
that piece. I
Probably
need to go
by
check
11:30.
11:30.
That'd be better.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right.
alright, so
That's good, because
we've got our homework, you've got the transportation on the next thing, my coming back on the GA, and some other pieces around the streaming.
And the yield is,
And the,
we'll take care of the ed payment. That'd be.
Once you do the, I think if you do the yield at
The
one,
opioid.
then we could close the yield stuff
Alright.
when you meet at
or
4.
opiate language to you and Rich. And then is there PCB?
I'm looking at that, I've,
PCB with Peter, right?
Well, I need
Peter
that.
and Brian.
right.
You know what's?
And do you want to do the 120 section at all, or do that at 11:30?
Oh, yeah.
I can give, why don't I give a high level of the problem that we have to solve, so that you guys can think on. So Emily Burton's the joint fiscal office, so the issue with the we started to write up a memo and then we didn't get it finished over the weekend, so I'll just talk about it. But so the issue with C-120, when
We thought base was base and it's not all base.
we thought base was base, we also thought it was all general fund, and it's a mix of general fund and federal funds that both bodies spent a mix of dollars on things that the mixed dollars can't necessarily be redeployed to. So we have to figure out is how to, whether or not there's funding available in the base to help cover the priorities that both the House and the Senate had for those dollars that are being reallocated. Initially, the initial language sort of indicated that it was just, the idea was to reallocate the monies that were appropriated in the base in FY '24 to be redeployed one time in FY '24. Further conversations, that wasn't the intent of either body, that those monies that are in the base in FY '24 would be redeployed in the base, sort of in perpetuity for the House had support spectrum youth services post permanency, and the Senate had post permanency grants to youth service bureaus, funding for the recovery resident housing. I can't residents. It's like a mental block. I can't.
know.
I'm never gonna get it right. So. And the there was a fourth thing: homeless youth service bureau, post permanency, and the I already forgot what it was. Recovery residents. Thank you. So we'll have to figure out sort of whether or not there's funding in the base, what of those two things can be covered from those funding, and then we'll redeploy the base funds for sub-adoption services that was.
Now, we do have agreement on the adoption support at the 270.
Yes.
Okay, so the question is how much more we've got to put, youth service bureaus, we just gave each of them 25,000. And then we took the balance and used it to give an increase on the recovery residents, 3%. Actually, it was more than that, it was 7%.
We had.
Then the agency had not wanted to specify a particular youth homeless provider. And so we did not and used the balance for that. So we have to go back and look at how we, and how much more we could maybe move into that section to deal with the fact that some of it wasn't all general fund based to be used as in the way that we wanted, but at least we could start with the 270 for the post adoption
We all
support,
agree with that.
and then just figure out what we do with the other three pieces and how that fits with the opioid settlement money and recovery and adding
Yeah,
operating for.
it was confusing to me to see recovery in DCF because we don't fund recovery residences in DCF.
No, we don't. No,
That was a
no.
JFO.
Well,
So that's why we went conference committee.
we know that, and I kept saying, it's not centers, it's residents, it's not
Yes,
centers.
right.
And I can't, it's blocked, I can't keep straight.
President Boyd has a very nice sheet that was a part of their presentation. It really helps.
Yes. So,
Okay.
with this,
In an hour?
no.
Can I do one more just on that? So
Hours and minutes.
on the C-120, so when it came out of the House, it was in the B section because there was intent to be ongoing. And then in the technical letter, it had said this is supposed to be one time, and because there was miscommunications, it was moved to one time in the C section. Whatever the sort of resolution is, we will strike C-120 and that will go away. And I think the best work, our recommendation would be to not worry about FY '24 at this point, to just let that money go and DCF will do what they want with it and then, or they'll deploy it appropriately. And then to think about it in FY '25
How we want to.
specifically,
Yeah.
we'll add language to E317, which was DCF Family Services, so we'll include the post-adoption language or post-permanency, language in that section, and then whatever other items that are invested in will go in the language, either in B317 if it's those sorts of things, or if it's the thing that was supposed to go in the health department that we put in the wrong section, we'll make sure that goes to the health department. That
So
that make the cut.
in order to, whatever we end up there, we.
That's a
gonna
big
have to
deal.
put a little bit of
Yes.
general funds to make it work. And
Right.
then where we would take that, we'll some discussion.
So maybe then at 11:30, depending on where we are with others, we can take a look at the base one time. Some of the contingencies, got some language to come back.
Probably at 3%.
Yeah, the
We got the 3%.
And I have some language being drafted for that. There was some concern. If you agree to these increases, to be, clear that our intent, which was that recognizing the inflationary costs that this would, last year, remember, we carved it up and used something to try to deal with rate disparity. Or 3%,
Oh,
just
yeah.
saying, it would be 3%. So we want to make it clear that it's to the agents, SSAs and the DAs. That was the DAs in particular where we had, remember, that we had swimming.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to
It became a little
be
complicated.
clear.
We fixed it in the BAA, I believe.
So it's just to be clear that we really are not talking about addressing rate disparity, that we're talking about all the agencies getting a 3% increase in.
Yeah.
So I've got Katie's working on some
Okay.
language for that. Okay, so I'm gonna adjourn and we'll be back in about an hour at 11:30 and we'll just keep plugging away.